If you are preparing for business analyst interview at KPMG, don't spend the next few days memorizing random interview question from the internet. Instead, prepare based on what candidates were actually asked during recent KPMG interviews. So in this video, I'm going to show you three things. First, we'll look at a real KPMG business analyst hiring opportunity to understand what they are actually looking for. Second, I'll walk you through a document we have compiled based on interview experiences shared by our recent Interact alumni. We'll discuss the interview structure and actual question candidate faced. And finally, I'll share a few practical suggestions on how I would prepare if I had a KPMG interview scheduled next week. Let's get started. All right. So the first thing, let us try to filter out the KPMG opportunity, like for business analyst as per the location India. So I'll just go and search for KPMG India. So you'll get to observe that there are a lot of opportunities, out there for senior BA managers, different locations, Hyderabad, Bangalore, and all of those. Let me just take you through one of our document that we have compiled. All right. So if we go through this particular interview process at KPMG, first of all, let's observe the job description. It says typical responsibilities include gathering and analyzing business requirements, supporting consulting and advisory engagement, identify gaps in business process, conducting stakeholder workshop discussion, preparing documentation such as BRDs, FRDs, user story, supporting business transformation initiative, and collaborating with business and technology team. So if you just observe these expectations, we can pretty much identify that they are looking for a functional business analyst. Now, I'm not trying to mention that all opportunities at KPMG are exclusively looking for a functional business analyst. So when you try to observe the job description, you'll pretty much be able to identify if it's a functional BA, a technical BA, a techno-functional BA, BA cum DA, PA cum QA, whatever different types of BA roles that exist. However, sticking to this particular job description and the question being asked to this given applicant, if we go through the interview structure, this particular interview just had two rounds. Round one, technical and functional, close to 30 to 45 minutes, followed by managerial and consulting, another 30 to 45 minutes. So first, let's look at round one, what question sets were asked part of this given round. So in this first, as always, introduction and experience, where you are supposed to give a brief introduction about yourself. The most important, walk me through your current project. So, this is where I have observed most of you are not able to give a proper project justification. And I will recommend all of you that you try to go ahead and, watch one of our video we have recently posted on how to give a proper project justification leveraging AI. So you will be able to understand that where we might go wrong as far as current project justification is concerned. And that is where, depending upon whatever methodologies that you're working currently part of your organization, you are also supposed to talk about the responsibility as a business analyst in sync with the current project justification you're giving. Followed by some fundamental BA question that were asked. What is business analysis? What techniques do you use for requirement gathering? What documentation do you create as a business analyst? Explain the difference between BRD, FRD, user story, difference between functional and non-functional requirement. I always recommend to go for short and crisp response so that it is not exceeding more than 90 seconds as far as our responses are concerned. So the jargons that we are using for the explanation, it matters the most, along with a practical scenario if we can try to explain. Similarly, there were certain questions on Agile. Explain Agile methodology. So first of all, it should not be Agile. As we are aware, it should be Agile Scrum as a methodology. What are Scrum ceremonies? What role does a BA play in Agile project? What is backlog prioritization? Followed by a couple of stakeholder scenario questions. So if you look at this, as far as these questions are concerned, let's say explain a situation where you had to handle a difficult stakeholder. Describe a situation where stakeholder had conflicting requirement. How do you manage changing requirement in a project? Now, these questions are always supposed to be answered in an interactive manner. And that is why I always recommend whenever you are being asked questions on situational or behavioral type that also involves stakeholder engagements, I recommend you to follow STAR framework. Again, we have already recorded one of our dedicated video on how to respond using STAR framework, given some, sample response as well. You can go ahead and watch that particular video to understand how we can leverage STAR framework to respond to behavioral or situational question being asked in our interview. Now, all these questions were asked part of round one. Let's now try to observe what other question that are asked. So if you now go through the next section, this involves technology question. So your observation, pretty much observing the job description, it could be that, as I already said previously, that we might be in the impression that it is a functional BA role. However, you will observe that there are a few organizations might ask you a few technical questions as well, even if they are not mentioning those in the job description. So now if we go through these, it also covers what is cloud computing, what advantage does cloud bring to organization, what are the risks associated with cloud migration, and couple of questions on data and analytics. So that is where I said it is important for us to analyze the job description. However, there is also a rule, I call it 60-40% rule. So in case, if you're not able to respond to those questions being asked in your interview, one of the best way for you to justify that is showcase a positive and a learning attitude in your interview. It doesn't mean you are not supposed to work on your technical skills. However, if you are not able to respond to any given question in your interview, you can always try to go ahead with one of a sample response like, in my current organization, my role is more like a functional business analyst. However, given the opportunity under your guidance, I'll be more than happy to explore more on the technical business analyst role as well. So what you are doing is, you're not denying for the new opportunities coming to learn new skill sets. However, you are communicating this very transparently to your recruiters that in the current organization you're working, you are never given the opportunity to work on those skills, the question that they're trying to ask in your interview. Now, let us go through the round two of this given interview. So if we pretty much go through what questions being asked, so it was majorly focused on managerial or consulting question. So what questions we have from consulting mindset? Why do you want to join KPMG? Why consulting? What do you know about KPMG services? And a couple of experience-based question. So again, these experience-based, in a very close sync, I already discussed situational or behavioral question for which we are already aware we are supposed to follow STAR framework. Now, what question were asked? Tell me about a challenging project you worked on. Describe a situation where you influence stakeholders. Tell me about a conflict you faced in team and how you handle it. How do you manage tight deadline and multiple priorities? And then the last, this covers few career questions. So where do you see yourself in next few years? What are your strengths and weaknesses? What value you can bring to KPMG? So these are those set of questions that, pretty much were asked in KPMG interview. I hope this walkthrough gives you a much clearer understanding of how to prepare for KPMG Business Analyst interview. One piece of advice I would leave with you is this. Don't prepare to answer questions. Prepare to explain your project, justify your decisions, and demonstrate how you solve a business problem. That's what interviewers are really looking for. And if you found this video helpful, please consider sharing it with your friends or any business analyst, job seeker, any WhatsApp group you are associated with, any LinkedIn group you are part of. It could genuinely help someone preparing for their next interview. And if you're interested in seeing interview breakdown question for companies like Deloitte, EY, PwC, Accenture, Cogni, Infosys, Capgemini, others, let me know in the comments. We'll continue bringing real interview experiences from alumni to help the BA community prepare smarter. Finally, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, I will also request you to subscribe to this channel. We publish practical content every week on business analysis, AI, interview preparation, and career growth. Thank you for watching this. I'll see you in the next video.